or fairly quick deaths, usually involving heart failure, heart attacks or strokes.
Based on the medical histories, the deaths seemed normal. But still, there seemed to be something strange. What was happening? Dr. Shipman and John Shaw are the only ones aware of the rising number of deaths. That is, until Reverend Dennis Marr begins to notice his church members missing from Sunday Mass.
I was settling into the parish and getting to know people. It was beginning to become noticeable, the number of people who died suddenly. People who would be here in the church on a Sunday, and the following day and be told that they were found dead in the house.
Is there a hidden illness yet to be identified? Or is it something more sinister?
These people were normally people you would not expect to die suddenly. They hadn't said they weren't well, or they hadn't any particular illness that would lead one to believe that they would just drop dead.
Yet they did. One after another, their hearts just stopped. Despite the doctor's best efforts, something or someone was preying on the people of Hyde, and it seemed to be affecting Dr. Shipman's patients, Reverend Marr's church members, and John Shaw's customers. What was the link? Only 4 months after James Davidson died in the home he shared with his brother Frank, a handyman came by the house to finish some repair work. Frank Davidson had passed away. A second terrible shock to the family. News of the Davidson brothers' deaths soon reaches taxi driver John Shaw.
My neighbour told me that the brothers had died very close together.
As more of his taxi customers die, Shaw realizes a disturbing pattern. He has driven them all to the same doctor.
I got to the stage where when someone told me of a death, I was immediately saying, "Who's the doctor?" And it was always the same answer.
John Shaw realizes all of the patients are under Dr. Shipman's care. Is something wrong with the doctor? Is he misdiagnosing his patients?
My brain was telling me that I was at fault. I was going crackers to even consider that a very well-respected doctor in Hyde, the best doctor in Hyde, supposedly, was killing his patients. It was ridiculous.
When Dr. Dirks learns the second Davidson brother has died of a heart attack, he finds it odd.
It's obviously something that strikes you as unusual, particularly when two members of one family die close together.
And again, there is a record of heart problems.
Such a death certainly didn't evoke any anxiety on my part. It all seemed absolutely normal.
The doctors search for some trigger for the mysterious heart attacks. The cause might be a simple one.
Deep breath. There's always, that time of year, some sort of flu viral type infections going around, but it's always bad at the early part of the year and through the winter. Death rates do rise due to respiratory problems in the winter. We deal with death on a daily basis. The patients were almost always people who appeared to have had a period of considerable ill health before they died.
But they would soon find out that the deaths were anything but normal. Doctors Dirks and Patel do not realize it, but a cloaked killer is still on the prowl. In Hyde, England, a string of sudden deaths raises some residents' suspicions.
It wasn't like, for example, that there was a plane crash, and so suddenly there would be a block of people gone. It was drip, 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 and that was the way these people were dying.
As more and more people are buried, the local undertaker begins to notice a terrifying pattern. In March of 1998, a doctor from the Brooks surgery is at the mortuary to countersign another cremation form. One of the funeral directors mentions a concern they have about the deaths.
Dr. Root, do you mind if I have a word?
There is something extremely puzzling about the way the bodies were found.
Another observation made by the funeral directors was that the bodies were all found in a very similar manner. They were fully dressed and often sat comfortably, either in a chair or an armchair.
See what he says.
Something didn't seem right. Heart attack victims are usually found on the floor, appearing distressed, perhaps struggling to get to a phone. The bodies had all been found with no sign of trauma. That meant the deaths weren't natural, a startling find. Patients weren't falling because of a mysterious and sudden illness. They were being killed by a person. The funeral directors notice something even more unsettling.
All of the deaths that we were co-signing cremation forms for were all of Dr. Shipman's.
The doctors at Brooks Surgery start to recall earlier conversations.
It was just the casual remark made between us, perhaps at a regular meeting, where one of us might say, you know, forgive me for being late, I've had to sign a cremation form for Dr. Shipman rather urgently. And that might trigger a remark from another doctor, which would be, well, that's a coincidence. I did a form for Dr. Shipman myself.
Now it is not only John Shaw and the Brooks Surgery doctors talking about Dr. Shipman.
I was aware that on my visitations around the parish and when I would be out there among the people, how often Dr. Shipman was mentioned. First of all, about how wonderful he was and how caring he was, but also the other aspect of that was people would often say in a jocose way, we sometimes call him Dr. Death because so many of his patients seemed to die suddenly.
Even though there is now considerable speculation that Dr. Shipman is somehow behind the deaths, Shaw, Maher, and the doctors have absolutely no proof. In his gut, taxi driver John Shaw knows something terrible is happening.